Hello everybody and welcome. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the augmented chord. And let's get started with an example of what it sounds like. The augmented chord sounds fancy, but in reality it's very easy to use and it's very easy to find. So let's now talk about what it is. The augmented chord is a triad. So it's a chord that has 3 notes. It's what's known as an altered chord, meaning that one of the notes is raised or altered from its normal state. The altered note is always the 5th of the chord. And finally, it's most commonly used with dominant function, so it wants to resolve directly to the tonic 1 chord. Let's now go over how to find one. This is the key of C major and the 7 chords contained within the key. Since the augmented chord has dominant function, we want to use G major as the basis. As a side note, if you're wondering, you can use the chord G major or G dominant 7 interchangeably. They both have dominant function and it's up to you as the composer to decide which one to use. Since we want a triad, we're going to use G major. So G major is the 5 chord. The notes of G major are G, B, and D. With an augmented chord, we want to alter the 5th of the chord, which in our case is the note D. We'll raise the note D 1/2 step to D sharp. We now have an alter note to give us the augmented triad. I mentioned it earlier, but the augmented chord has the same function as a dominant chord. We're only changing a single note of the chord, we're not changing how it functions. So let's listen to a chord progression with our new G augmented chord. The first time, we'll use the G major triad, and then the second time, we'll use the G augmented triad so you can hear the difference. The next thing we're going to talk about is voice leading. So with the augmented triad, we've raised one of the notes up by 1/2 step. Generally with music composition, if you raise a note or make it sharp, you want to continue that upward direction in the next chord. I'm mentioning it not because you have to do it or if it's some kind of hard rule, but I want you to know about it so that if you do want to break it, you know exactly what you're doing. Thankfully, the augmented chord makes voice leading very easy. Let's bring the progression back, and I've isolated just the G augmented chord and the C major tonic chord. With the note D sharp, remember it's been raised and it wants to resolve in an upward motion in the next chord. The beautiful thing about music theory, our tonic chord, C major, contains the note E. So D sharp will resolve nicely to the note E. Here's the progression again, but I've isolated notes so we can hear how the altered chord is resolved. Now we've talked about the augmented chord and how it's pretty easy to use. Like most things in music theory, there are no rules on when you can use it or how often you want to use it. However, like the video title suggests, there is a special trick that the augmented chord has. And that's how you can create an atmospheric outer space feel with using this chord. To do this, head to your favorite DAW or music production software and find a good synth sound. For this little example, we'll start with the chords G augmented and C major. Next, we'll have a drone on the note G in the bass clef. Then we'll play the G augmented chord in the treble clef. Another trick is to play the chord again, but an octave higher. And finally, we'll resolve it to C major. Here's what that sounds like. For our last example, we'll use 2 chords again. This time, we'll use G major and G augmented and bounce between the two. And we're going to arpeggiate the chords. When you arpeggiate, it means to play each note of the chord separately rather than all at once like in a block chord. This example is useful for song intros or outros. So we're only using 2 chords and we're bouncing between the two. But it still gives us that spacey sound. As we wrap up, the augmented chord can give you a really atmospheric outer space sound, and while it's best used in moderation, it's always a good addition to your repertoire. Anyway, that's all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching.